Listen, every single day you can open up your phone and find some boomer politician, some boomer CEO, some boomer Fox News pundit telling you the same exact lie. That Gen Z is lazy, that they don't want to work, that they expect everything handed to them, that they need to just suck it up and grind like their grandparents did. And honestly, I'm tired of it. Because if you actually sit down and look at the numbers, what's happening to Gen Z right now is not a work ethic problem. It's the result of one of the biggest economic transfers in human history. From the young to the old, from the workers to the owners. And the generation pointing fingers at Gen Z is the same generation that pulled the ladder up behind them. So today we're going to do something nobody on television will do. We're going to actually look at the math. And by the end of this video, I think you're going to be a little angry. I know I am. Let's start with the basic deal. When boomers entered the workforce in the late 1960s and 1970s, here is what they walked into. A median home that cost about 3 times the average yearly salary. A college education at a public university that you could literally pay for by working a summer job. Strong labor unions that protected wages and benefits. Pension plans that guaranteed you a check for the rest of your life after retirement. A stock market that quadrupled during their prime earning years. And a tax system where corporations and the wealthy actually paid their share. That was the deal. Work hard, follow the rules, and the system would lift you up. And for the most part, it did exactly that for them. Now let's compare that to what Gen Z is walking into. The median home today costs about 7 to 9 times the average salary. In some cities, it's 15 times. A public university that used to cost a few $1,000s now costs tens of thousands per year. And student debt is now sitting at over $1.7 trillion in the United States alone. Pensions are basically extinct. Most Gen Z workers will retire on whatever they manage to save themselves, which for most of them is nothing. Unions have been gutted. Wages have been frozen relative to inflation for decades. And just to add a cherry on top, climate change is now an existential threat. And AI is on track to eliminate huge chunks of the white-collar workforce in the next 5 to 10 years. So when you tell a 22-year-old to just work hard and they'll be fine, you are literally lying to them. And they know you're lying to them. That's the whole point of what's happening right now. Let me hit you with the cleanest statistic that nobody on Fox News will ever show you. Baby boomers represent about 20% of the US population. They hold 51% of all the wealth in the country, millennials and Gen Z combined. They are also about the same percentage of the population. They hold around 9 to 11% of the wealth. That is not an accident. That is not because Gen Z is lazy. That is the direct result of 40 years of economic policy designed to funnel wealth upwards. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulation, wage suppression, union busting, housing as an investment instead of a place to live, healthcare costs that bankrupt working families, all of it. And who voted for all of those policies decade after decade? Take a wild guess. But here's the part that really makes me lose my mind. Worker productivity in the United States has grown by roughly 60 to 80% since 1979. That means the average worker today produces almost twice as much as a worker did back then. But wages have grown by about 17% in the same period, adjusted for inflation. So workers are producing way more value than ever before. And almost none of that value is going back to them. It's going to shareholders. It's going to executives. And the executives who are taking those salaries while telling Gen Z to grind harder. Most of them are boomers, sitting in offices their employees can't afford to live near, telling the next generation that they just don't want to work. It is genuinely one of the most insulting setups in modern history. So let's flip the question around. Instead of asking why Gen Z doesn't want to work, let's ask the actual question. Why would they? Why would you destroy your body, your mental health, your relationships, and your 20s for a job that will never pay you enough to own a home? For a company that will lay you off the second the stock price dips? For a retirement that will never come because the systems that funded retirement got dismantled before you were even born? Why would anyone sign up for that? Gen Z didn't reject work. They rejected the lie that the system still works the way the older generations are telling them it works. And honestly, that is not laziness. That is the most rational response to a broken contract that I have ever seen. Now I already know what some of you are typing in the comments. You're saying, my dad worked hard. My grandma raised 5 kids on one income. They didn't complain, they just got it done. And I hear you, those stories are real. Those people did work hard. Nobody is saying they didn't, but here is what you have to understand. They were working hard inside a system that actually rewarded hard work. They had access to homes that cost a fraction of what they cost now. They had medical care that didn't bankrupt them. They had pensions. They had unions. They had a country investing in its workers instead of its shareholders. They didn't just work hard. They worked hard in a system that worked for them. Gen Z is working hard inside a system specifically built to extract every dollar out of them and give it to people who already have everything. That is the difference. And pretending it's not is the most boomer thing imaginable. And let me address one more thing, because I know it's coming. Some of you are saying, well, not all boomers are wealthy. And you are right. There are millions of boomers right now living on tiny social security checks, watching their healthcare get more expensive, watching their kids and grandkids struggle. They got screwed too, because here's the truth. This was never really about boomers versus Gen Z. It's about the working class versus the people who own everything. The system used boomers to build their wealth. Now it's using their grandchildren to extract more. The trick was always to get us fighting each other across generations, while the people at the top kept robbing all of us. So, if you're a boomer and you're watching this, this isn't about you personally. This is about the policies and the politicians your generation kept voting for decade after decade. And maybe it's time to admit those policies failed everyone except the people writing the checks. So the next time you see some 70-year-old senator on TV with a $2 million net worth telling Gen Z to just work harder, remember this. They lived through an economy that handed them everything. Then they voted in politicians who systematically dismantled that economy. And now they're blaming the kids who inherited the ruins for not being grateful enough. Gen Z isn't quite quitting. They're not lazy. They're not entitled. They are responding logically to a system that has shown them, very clearly, that it does not care if they live or die. And until older generations are willing to admit that and actually do something about it, this generational war is going to keep getting worse. So I want to know what you actually think. Are boomers responsible for the mess? Or is this all just whining? Drop your honest take in the comments. I read all of them. See you in the next one.